What's going on, everybody? We are back here at LMC TV for another edition of Scriptly Adapted Uncut Presents Artist Roundtable. I'm Kyode.
I'm Kate. Welcome back, guys.
Welcome back, guys. So we have
Happy
a
New
great
Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm saying it to everybody.
I don't think we've been on since the New Year, right?
So I can say it.
So you can say it.
January 17th, but it's, you know.
I think we're done with that, right?
No.
Yeah, we're done. So we're back with another show, guys. We have another very special guest, artist, producer, host, Kevin Vachna of Talking Technophobia in Film. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Say that 5 times fast. Did you try that out once?
Talking Technophobia in Film?
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah.
Before it just becomes nonsense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
but
welcome.
Thank you for joining us, man. This is a great show because we are huge movie nerds, movie buffs. When we finally found out that LMC TV was doing a film class, we were like, oh,
yeah.
Takes me back to purchase days,
class.
right? Yeah, it takes me back to purchase days.
Me
So,
too. Well, I didn't go to purchase. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the connection is there, right?
It's there, yeah.
Right? But Kevin, we wanted to talk to you about your future projects, the shows you've already done, what's inspired you, what's led you. So, as a kid, I like to start off real light, you know? As a kid, how did you know that you had a love, or what garnered that love for film growing up?
Okay, both my parents worked, so they had a older family friend watch me, and that involved her making me toast in the morning and then kind of putting me in front of the television set for good chunks of the day. And I'd go outside and play pretend and use my imagination, but a lot of my first impressions of the world came from looking at screens and absorbing those stories, whether it be film or television. And I like to create, I like to imagine, and the escapism aspect of it was always something that I really enjoyed. And then as I got older, it became about trying to tell your own stories and create your own worlds. And that really, started it for me. I remember my dad having the original Star Wars trilogy and me being really interested because the box art looked cool.
Right.
And laser swords, and then dinosaurs. Jurassic Park comes out when I'm young, and that plays a big role. I think a lot of young children think dinosaurs are cool, and I definitely went through a dinosaur stage.
Yeah, did you? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Now, did you
Did
have action figures?
I did, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
I did, and I said to someone recently that I probably played with action figures long past when it was okay to tell people I played with action figures.
Listen, I won't ask your age, but did you ever create with the action figures?
Yeah.
So that's how I knew. So that's a really cool connection. I used action figures to kind of create my own movies.
I think that's cool. I mean, honestly, when you're a creative, you want to see things come to life, right? So what better way to use what you have? You work with what you got.
Yep.
That's my theory. So, what inspired you?
Movies I did with my Ninja Turtles.
Nice.
But didn't you super glue the arms in
I did.
certain positions?
I was a little obsessive. I liked to stay in a certain position.
I always use
for
Scotch tape.
You
All right,
use Scotch
super glue is
Oh
hardcore.
no, not you too.
I knew I was
I
the
knew
only
your
one.
kindred
You need
spirit was
props,
out
come
there
on.
somewhere.
And I would just place them and have them in
You
battle
just see the
scenes and
superhero
everything. Yeah.
and he's stuck that way for months.
Listen, man.
Dude, stop flexing.
I was okay with it.
But Kevin, what inspired you to produce Talking Technophobia here at LMC TV?
So I had gotten involved helping out, volunteering with LMC probably 2 or 3 years prior. I was really interested in a lot of the resources and a lot of the shows that people were doing, and I wanted to, come up with something I could do that would not feel disingenuous. And I very much enjoy movies. I make the joke, and it's not really my joke. I definitely stole this from someone else, but I'm made of movies kind of thing. So I wanted to talk about movies with people, and I figured this was the best way to do it.
Right.
Come to LMC, let's start the class, and then people would come and talk about movies with me, as opposed to doing something where it's just me talking.
Yeah.
I wanted to involve the community. I wanted to connect with people. And I wanted to give like-minded individuals, creatives, people who watch movies and ask questions, a place to come together and talk and disagree and argue, in a safe space.
Friendly.
Yeah, no, but definitely.
Yeah.
That's a part of it, because we do have people, different ages, different demographics, different walks of life who have very different perspectives on the stuff we're talking about. But everyone's really respectful of each other, and that was something that was really important to me as well. Like, it's not my show, it's our show.
Right.
And like, I think we need to like practice like disagreeing and talking to people who disagree, and that being okay.
Yeah.
You know, and like, what
Definitely.
if movies is the thing that helps us do it, then all right, like, let's start it.
Yeah, and listen, that's big because especially if I hate a film, I kind of want to say it and let people know about it or why I hate it, and having that conversation, maybe I might think about, oh, maybe I didn't think about that part.
Yeah.
Maybe I do need to go back and take a look and see what you're talking about. It opens up this whole new conversation, like you mentioned, about not being so one lane of thinking, and kind of broaden out a little bit and think about what you're really watching and break it down. So I really appreciate it. It kind of definitely takes me back to film class,
Oh, me
right?
too, for sure. And I loved that. Like,
yeah.
honestly, I was a communication major, but I minored in film, and I loved sitting in film class and just dissecting the hell out of a film. Like, oh, but you could go this way with it. Oh, but what if we went this way? And what if we like, oh, but you could take both ends of the spectrum and tie them together, and that's how the film was made. Like, it was just awesome. And we would sit, my film class, my very first film class was Intro to Film, and it was a 3.5-hour class because we'd watch the movie and then we'd sit there and discuss it. And it was just awesome. Like, I loved those classes.
And I love that you bring up different parts of the show that maybe someone never really thought of.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool because there was a class that I sat in, and you brought up different topics and subjects, and I was like, oh, I never even really thought about it with that particular film.
Yeah.
So it definitely opens up your mind to think outside
Like
of
your
just
theme
the general thing.
is a perfect example. Like, I never even thought about it like that. I'm not a huge technophobe, so I never like really looked at that aspect of, and it's present in all these different films. So it kind of segues me into my next question, which was technology in film your first theme for the show, or did you play around with other possibilities?
As we talked kind of a little bit prior to recording, right? Like, I've got like a small wheelhouse of like a couple things that I've thought a lot about, right? Things I enjoy talking about, things that I don't necessarily have the answers to, but like I like asking the questions and hearing other people's thoughts on it. And the technology is definitely one of them, because like, as I'm watching movies growing up, right, and we have all these like genre-bending blockbusters that are coming out, something I'm starting to notice is technology is becoming increasingly important to the production and creation of these films, but at the same time, the films are becoming much more like apprehensive of the role of technology in our lives.
Right.
And that juxtaposition, that paradox that like seems to have developed in American cinema, but cinema in general, going back to like its first inception really in the 30s when we get like Frankenstein, is interesting to me, because it's like you the more you need technology, the more afraid of it you are.
Yeah.
And like, that is something I saw as I'm watching movies and growing up, and it's something that's always interested me, because I'm very conscious about the role of technology in my life. And I'm constantly questioning, like, is it helping or is it hurting? Is it doing both? Do I need to like moderate and regulate myself and my own consumption of it? Is it having negative effects on us all generationally as we're growing up now? And I don't know, right? I don't have the answers, and I don't think any of us do, but we've got a lot of ideas.
Right.
And I think being able to talk about that is really cool.
Awesome.
I felt like I was in class just now.
I
That was
did
really
too.
good.
I was
That
like,
really good.
I was mesmerized.
I was like,
wow,
man, that's really interesting.
That's very like.
Didn't really think about
I didn't
it.
think
I
about
put
it
on my
like that at
teacher.
all.
You did
my
put it
teacher.
on.
Yeah,
I
like-
appreciate it.
Yeah,
touched
it was
the
like,
mic.
wow.
Now, speaking about technology, right? Made the theme of your show.
Sure.
One of the classes that still stands out to me, because it's probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
This is true.
Is Jurassic Park, right? Really in-depth conversation about Jurassic Park. Really opened my eyes to think about the technology and dinosaurs and man playing God in some weird aspects within the film, right? So that was probably definitely one of my favorite
Yeah, it was
classes.
awesome.
And it was a coincidence, because I was like thinking back in film class, we watched that same film and still had the same effect on me, with it being this huge, I guess, like you said, kids love dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Kids love dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I was terrified, but loved the film for everything it stood for. Was just mesmerized on how they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a good part of the class that we also talked about as well. So what I want to do, I want to throw to an actual clip of of your actual class from Jurassic Park. Take a look, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just even Malcolm by this point. Grant and Sadler are also kind of like, have been converted a little bit to his viewpoint. Going back to the white and black with the Hammond and Malcolm's clothes, that dichotomy, that conflict between their ideologies, you see them almost like God and the devil competing for the other people's like allegiance in a way, trying to win them over, persuade them, have their support. Yeah.
Is watching the film, I was trying to understand if Malcolm Sadler and Grant's concern was more for the people who would because this is already done, so the dinosaurs are there.
Yeah.
So is the concern more for the people who will show up and pay their money, and God forbid something happens, or is it more the concern of how the creation of these dinosaurs took place? Like
The latter.
What do you guys think? Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
See, I don't think, I mean, again, opinions, we're all entitled. Personally, I'm like, they're not worried about the people yet. They're worried about the dinosaurs, right? Like, she says, there's plants. You don't know if they can eat them. You don't know how they'll react. And he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do for a job now. Because then when they're going up the stairs with the kids, they're like, oh, what are you going to do? Oh, I guess we'll evolve. I don't think they're even worried about themselves yet. And that's the big thing they're missing. They're worried about the animals. And we know because, we've seen the movie and stuff, and we've seen movies, so we know where it's going. But we know they should be worried about themselves.
So that was a clip from the Jurassic Park class, and that was actually me who asked that question. No, we didn't even plan it that way. We weren't looking for my question. It was just
Blind.
You're so
it was fate. Yeah, I guess it was just meant to be, right?
Serendipitous.
It was. I love that movie, by the way. One of my all-time favorites, people. Check it out. Rom-com is my favorite genre. Do a rom-com. No, I mean,
could.
I don't really know how
Ooh.
technology. Well, that would be interesting.
Could.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah,
Rom-com
because again,
technology.
all film says something about culture.
Yeah.
Is a response to culture, shapes culture. Rom-coms are definitely putting ideas out there, showing us things. We could talk. There's room to grow. I don't know.
Offline, people. Offline.
Maybe co-produce a little
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Let's see. Okay.
Speaking of collaborating and prep, how much prep goes into each show?
Decent amount. It starts with deciding what movie we're gonna do, and then a lot of watching of the movie. I would say, on average, I really do try to watch the movie 3 times in preparation
okay.
for the
Oh.
class.
Wow.
Now, again, sometimes I'd watch it once. Like we did the Back to the Future trilogy one class, and that was. I couldn't. I barely again. I love those movies and films, but Back to the Future 3 was a struggle.
Yeah,
And so I watched those once, and sometimes it's once. But there are usually movies I've seen before, movies I can almost recite. But watching it, taking notes, then making groups from my notes and organizing those things. And basically, once I've got my random things I've written down into groups, I can give those groups a name, and that really helps me pull out symbols and themes. I do a lot of brainstorming and outlining.
Okay.
I think the pre-writing is a really important part to any kind of project. You got to do the brainstorm. You got to do the outline.
You're also a teacher, so it's
And
that's very important.
And I say this because I'd like people to, my students, to do outlines before they write the essay.
Please
You should know
brainstorm.
what you're talking about before you start the essay.
Yes.
I am not a brainstormer at all.
think it's an important part.
I
You need to be in
know. No,
college
it
to figure
is.
it
I
out.
I can't push myself to do it. It's I feel like brainstorming is more work than writing the actual paper. It just takes it all out of me.
And it's fine if it's your first
like-
draft, but by the time you
Yeah.
get to the end of the essay, you know we're off topic, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, totally.
You know
This is what
what you're
happens,
writing
guys.
about.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the essay, you know what you're writing about. You don't want me to read you figuring it out, right? You want to make an
That's
argument. You
true.
want to try to convince me of
That's
a point.
true. That's a good
And that's
point.
really what I do with my pre-writing. Then it becomes making the slides, and a lot of work and time goes into the slides. I do a couple passes through them. I want them to be visually engaging. I think of questions. I do a lot of like internet research around trivia. And then it's like at the same time, there's a lot of like promoting and trying to get the word out to get people to come and attend, and be a part of the discussion. So yeah, like I would say it's a significant amount of work on
Thorough
top
process.
of it's a thorough process on top of my full-time job.
Right.
But it's definitely a labor of love,
Yeah,
you
of
know.
course.
So like
Exactly.
I like seeing the enjoyment from the people in attendance, right? And like that makes it worth it.
Yeah, totally.
When we've ended and people still want to keep talking about
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
right?
it's
Like
like-
that's the best thing for me. Yeah.
Well, guys-
Dina's shooing us out.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
like, guys, you gotta go.
as
It's a
as
Friday
people are
night.
talking
It's
more.
9 o'clock. Well,
Exactly.
guys, we took a little trip into Kevin's brain, and in terms of what he goes through, what his process, and it looks a little bit like this. Check it out. First of all, I thought the time lapse was brilliant.
Yeah,
Like,
you.
but the way you did it with the three of you sitting on the couch, I was just like, that is so cool.
I can imagine those are the phases.
Yeah, like
of-
that is cool. And then, except you missed the phase where it kind of looks like this.
Yeah.
You
The phase
know,
where, like-
everybody has a phase where they're pulling their hair out.
That's true.
But that's cool. So
So Kev, so as Technophobia gets, bigger and bigger, and you expand on the ideas and the themes and the topics of the show, can you tell us what's next for Talking Technophobia?
Okay. So we just wrapped our last season. We did 11 classes. We ended with 1976 Network. Right? I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yes.
And we're taking a month off and we're playing around with our format a little bit. So second season, we're going to meet 4 times a year, like once a season. We're going to meet first in March, and we're gonna this season do Stanley Kubrick films.
nice.
In the lens of looking for like what are these movies telling us about culture and technology, how do they reflect things about the cultures of the past, but also like how can we take some of those lessons and apply them to our life today. So the first one we're doing in March is Dr. Strangelove, and
Yes.
there's some excitement buzzing about this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
love me some Kubrick, man.
Yeah.
He's a special director that should get some attention.
He was
Absolutely.
definitely different. I didn't see a lot of his films, but you took a Kubrick
Yeah, I've seen
seminar
the
in
majority
college,
of his
right?
films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it was Eyes Wide Shut, right? Was one of
Yes,
his films.
that's
I
one.
remember
That's
when
the
it
last
came
one, yeah.
out.
Yeah.
That was '97, right? I think.
Somewhere around there. I want to say
Yeah.
99 maybe, but you could be
99.
right.
And I saw
Yeah.
the preview for it, and I was like, looks weird. I'll pass.
Totally
but
weird. Yeah,
yeah,
I
very
feel
weird.
like that was Kubrick, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of appreciate it. But speaking of future plans, you do have a project that you're working on. It's called Obsolete. Would you
Oh,
like
yeah.
to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. Obsolete is the product of me being a public school teacher in New York City for about 10 years. And it is totally not a plea for help about what's going on in New York City. But I did have to stop working in New York City in order to like start the process of like releasing and publishing this work. Because, yeah, in some ways it is a reflection of that experience. But it's also very much concerned with the role of technology in our lives, and especially with like the effect of technology coming into the classroom and into the schools, because there has been an explosion of technology in the last 10, 15 years, and that has really caused a dramatic shift in the public education system. And I mentioned to someone recently, like what people think school is, that's not what school looks like anymore. And like movies and TV are still enforcing this like myth of what school looks like.
Yeah.
But school is very much teacher as technician, teacher as button pusher, teacher as like
Interesting.
manager as opposed to like educator, instructor. No longer am I the keeper of the knowledge, right? But I'm giving them the technological resources to find the knowledge themselves,
Right.
which in and of itself is not scary, right? But there are a lot of scary things for me potentially that exist. So Obsolete is kind of about that.
Okay.
It's a futuristic dystopia.
Listen, man, now you got
Interesting.
me interested. I'm
I
very
know.
curious on
And also,
some of your
like,
experiences.
this might sound very strange, and I didn't actually even see the film in its entirety, but Dangerous Minds comes to mind with Michelle Pfeiffer, right? Like, you think about how she influenced those kids, you know, but it's like, and that was what, in the 90s? So you had some technology, but not like we have now. But it was like, you know, being the keeper of the knowledge, like she was able to influence these kids and help them, and it was kind of like, but I'm sure it's harder now because
I
you're
can
competing
imagine.
with technology.
I can
You know,
imagine.
so it's like it's not just you in the front of the classroom.
Right.
Right.
You know, cell phones were getting big when we were in high school, and I remember we had rules. We couldn't have our phones, but so what we would do is we would hide them in the desk.
Yeah.
But some of my friends wore glasses, so one time my math teacher said, I know you're texting, and my friend was like, how does he know that? But he could see the reflection in her glasses, and it was
That's
like,
definitely one way.
yeah, it's like,
I'm sure you probably
I'm sure
seen-
you deal with it all the
often,
time now.
Students forget that, like, when I'm standing and you're sitting, I can see what's
you.
going on under your desk.
Yeah, like,
It's like I can
know
see
you're
it. Like,
texting, or
I'm not
Snapchatting,
texting.
Yeah.
or Instagramming, or YouTubing, or
Right,
whatever
yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting. That's
Yeah,
very
I'm gonna
interesting.
look out for that, man. Give
Okay.
me a sneak peek to that. But Kevin, there is a question we always like to ask.
It's
our
a big
guests.
build-up. It's a very tough one.
At the end of the show, we always like to ask, "What's your favorite movie?"
Yeah.
Oof.
I know it's hard. Listen,
Oh, man.
If you had to
film
pick.
buffs, film nerds. Listen, I know it's hard for us to answer that question.
That is so hard
But if
because
you
it
had to
changes
pick-
daily. I
Pick
feel
wisely.
like.
Dina's listening. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Speaking of Kubrick, right? Like, The Shining is one of those movies for me that I can watch it on loop all the time and find new things to focus on and be interested in.
Okay.
Do I think that's the best made movie? Is it even, I don't know. Is it my favorite movie right now? Sure, because you asked me, and like, I don't know, I was thinking about The Shining earlier because of probably Kubrick stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, like, let's say The Shining. Sure, let's go with that.
Okay.
All right.
You
know,
ask
it's-
me tomorrow, I'll have something different, but you know.
Yeah.
The concept still scares me. I actually haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah, it's
but
real horror.
Like, yeah, and I don't know
Yeah,
if I
Because
can.
like what's scary is like being trapped in a place with the people you love and slowly driving each other crazy to the point of like murderous rage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that's something much more to be afraid of than like Boogeyman.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like,
It's
because we all have that experience of being in a car for a long time with your family and them starting to
Oh,
like
man.
piss you off.
yeah.
yes,
And I don't
8
have any
hours.
siblings, but that was
8 hours down south with your sibling and your cousins and father. It's just not fun.
That's
It's
real
not-
horror to me. you
That's
know?
real
That's real horror.
Well, what do you think about this show? That's movie coming out. Is it Ethan Hawke that's in the?
It's already out.
What is this? It's not a remake of
the,
The Shining, but it's like kind
Oh,
of
Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor.
yeah,
I get the two of them.
Dr.
confused.
Sleep.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Sleep.
Okay.
Yeah, I
What's
liked
that
it.
about?
It is totally a sequel to The Shining,
Okay.
based on a book that was released that was a sequel to The Shining, written by Stephen King. It's about the son from the first movie
Yes.
as an adult.
Ah, okay.
It is very different tonally. It's not like a horror film, like especially in the same way like The Shining was a horror film. More like supernatural thriller, maybe.
Okay.
But it was an entertaining ride. I enjoyed it. The third act has a lot of stuff that's gonna look familiar. So like a lot of people, I think, enjoyed that aspect of it. And yeah, I liked it for
Okay.
like, again, like a spiritual kind of successor. There was some stuff down there where I'm like, cool, because I always wondered what would happen to
Right,
some of these
right.
characters.
Do you think you'll
after.
bring that up in some of the
Dr. Sleep?
yeah, like,
Maybe.
like, is it necessary? Like, do you think there's
Uh-huh.
things in Dr. Sleep that could easily we could talk about in The Shining and
I mean,
would
I
make
made
sense
it. We
for
made
the-
it work for The Shining, right?
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah, yeah.
Technophobia, so I'm sure we could find a way to make Dr. Sleep work. I kind of have a soft no sequel rules right now.
yes, yeah.
yeah.
But I'm sure as soon as we get to T2, right, like I have to break that
Oh,
rule.
man. Oh, man.
So
T2
I'd
is-
rather do
Ooh.
T2 than T1.
Can't wait.
But yeah, so like maybe you never know.
All right,
There's a lot of time.
Well, listen, guys, this is another episode of Artist Roundtable with our very own Kevin Vachna. Check us out, Talking Technophobia in Film. You can follow him on Instagram at Professor Movies. Kevin, you can thank me later for all the additional followers you'll get.
Thank you.
But check us out, guys, on YouTube, Instagram at Scriptly Adapted, and just keep following us and keep staying tuned. Thanks, guys.
Later.
Bye.